Well, sales and entrepreneurship are very intricately related in the sense that if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be able to get out and sell your product, yourself, your vision. You know, you have to sell every day that you're at it. And so if you don't have sales skills, you're not going to be a successful entrepreneur. It's a myth that I come up with, I build a better mousetrap that, you know, people will just beat a path to my door. That's the cliche. But it's true when it comes to technology. The best technology does not always win. You have to get out there and let people know about it. And that means you need to be effective at selling. So the role of sales, training people how to do sales, and the role of sales management at MIT at large, and especially at the MIT Sloan School of Management, is one we think is a very high priority. We put out a paper that talked about the 10 steps to improve entrepreneurship education, which we think is extremely important because that's where jobs are created primarily. And one of those was training in sales. And that's sales, how to sell effectively. And we just heard at this conference about Wick Grossbeck, sales is not about manipulation. Sales is about how do I meet my customer's need and communicate with my customer in a way that I am authentic and that they see value in what I have to offer. And I know how to find the right person, and I know how to do that in a time-compressed manner, in a short enough manner, so that it's cost-effective. Ultimately, what sales is about is reducing what we call our COCA, our cost of customer acquisition. And if you can do effective selling, you can reduce your cost of customer acquisition, which means you will be a profitable company. Or you will be more profitable, or you will be profitable. And sometimes you might not be profitable anyway, but that's another question. But ultimately, reducing your cost of customer acquisition is very important, and good salespeople, that's what they do. Now the other question is about sales management, and that gets to the point of once entrepreneurial venture starts, how does it scale? And there's a difference between sales people and sales management. Sales management, both are more methodical than what people think, but sales management is managing these people who are very difficult to manage at times. They can have, they're closers. They're out there, you know, figuring out how to achieve results in the shortest time frame possible. And that can be a difficult process. So sales management training is something that we look at, territory management, incentive systems, very, very important. Well, I think if you look, I think you will see them, and it's increasing. The MIT Sales Club, we have people here from many different schools. We get inquiries all the time about what we do. But I think you have to look at what MIT is. MIT actually is an institute, it's not a university. It has the logo of mens et manus, mind and hands. It's not about knowledge for knowledge's sake. We look to create new knowledge, but then have an impact on the world's problems. So we are about an institute, impact on the world, mens et manus, as opposed to, you know, knowledge for knowledge's sake. And many of the universities, you know, were started to train clergy or, you know, to have knowledge for knowledge's sake. That's not what MIT was about. MIT really was a school for, you know, people who are going to get things done, immigrants, kids. And, you know, there's a role for both, but that's why MIT is more involved in sales. I love this conference every year. It goes from, it's first of all high-spirited, that salespeople get together and they realize sales is a legitimate profession, a valued profession, and they see it from each other and they see all these other great people. So the spirit of the conference is something that invigorates me every year when I come. I also like the way that it's student-run. The students are driving this. This is not us. They're very kind and they give the faculty credit, but it's really the students that are driving this, and that's another point that's invigorating and inspirational to people when they come here. Just had that people saying, well, you should be very, how do you have time to do all this? I said, I don't really do anything. Well, the time that I spend is keeping them away from the bureaucracy of the Institute. But then you get down to fundamental skills that people start building, and they have some great ones. My favorite every year is this one where they tell you how to tell a story. To be a successful salesperson or presenter in a sales, you have to connect with people, and you have to know how to tell a story. Very, very good. The session we just had with Wick Grossbeck about his perspective on how important selling is in something like the Celtics, when you think it's just about getting the best players and outscoring the other team and the tickets will sell themselves. No, that's not the case. And then we have David Skok from Matrix Partners, who work with lots of startups, talking about how sales is a methodology that you go through. It's just great content, great spirit, and the last thing is networking. You meet a lot of people. Building your community, building your Rolodex or your LinkedIn connections is very important in sales and business in general. And the conference hits on all three of those points. Well, the advice I'd have for people who are considering attending the conference, first of all, sign up. And then sign up early, get the agenda, look through it. I would say call up the people who organize and say, hey, can I help in this? What can I do to help? The more involved you get, it's like many other things, the more effort you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it, guaranteed. I would get in the night before and I would make sure that you're well rested and you're able to socialize and make the most out of it, not just get what's in the classroom. Don't just focus on what's in the classroom. That's great, but focus about meeting the right people here and making those connections, and then carrying forth afterwards. I've had two people I've already met, very interesting people. One wrote a book, who's a speaker, and she gave it to me. We're having a very interesting conversation about women in entrepreneurship and the role of sales in that. And there are other great people here. So come well rested, get here early, try to get involved, and if you can, focus on which people at the conference on the agenda do you want to speak to. And then identify, if you can get an attendee list. I don't know if you can do that anymore, but if you get an attendee list, look at those people on the attendee list who you want to meet and make sure you get there. Well, the question is how is technology changing sales? And it is absolutely profoundly changing sales. It's changing the whole link between sales and marketing. When I first started back in 1980, I was trained at IBM. You were trained through a sales process, direct salespeople. That was the way to go. In today's, that's a very expensive way to sell. And sometimes you absolutely need to do it. It's a great skill to have. But today, more and more of the sales are done through electronic means, through social media, or what our friends Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah would call inbound marketing, to set up the sale. And by doing that, you can do a lot through connecting through people digitally. And so this is extremely important because we talked before about selling is about, and business is about, what's the lifetime value of an acquired customer? How can I make that customer profitable by having a very good relationship with them, by producing value for them that they want to stay with us and capturing that value? But on the other point, the cost of customer acquisition, the COCA, how do I minimize that? And if I have high-priced direct sales model and my competitor knows how to leverage technology and use inbound marketing techniques, I am at a huge disadvantage. And especially as entrepreneurs, I don't have those resources, I don't have that geographic coverage, I don't have that time. I have got to get out there and I've got to make myself aware to these people through search engine optimization, through blogging, through Twitter, through Facebook, through LinkedIn, all those means and more. If you don't understand those, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage today in today's market. And if you're doing that as an entrepreneur, I think you're crazy. I think you're really not a qualified entrepreneur if you don't understand how to use technology in today's sales process. So the question is direct sales a dying breed? I believe that at the people who want to be CEOs of companies, people want to be general managers of significant business units, they have to have good direct sales. That's really kind of communication skills. I think that is very, very important. Will you see masses of direct salespeople? You know, I tend not to think so. I think that it is a decreasing part of most people's business as you see more cost-effective ways to do that. On the other hand, I'll say, look at Groupon. I mean, Groupon has been the fastest growing company ever. And the sales that they've generated, and what's their competitive advantage? Their competitive advantage is direct sales, is shoes on the street, you know, getting out there and selling. So while technology will play a major, major role, and to not know how to use technology in the sales process is foolhardy, and I would say derelict of your duty if you consider yourself a sales professional. I would say that there is still a role for direct sales, and there will continue to be a role for direct sales, and it's hard to tell how big that will be, as I just mentioned through the Groupon example. So the question that we get is it a good idea to go into sales if you have an MBA? And the answer is an unqualified yes, it is a good idea, especially, I should say, unqualified if you haven't had experience carrying a bag before and having a quota. If you go to school for an MBA, you're looking to move up to a high level in your company. And if you want to move to a high level in your company, you must know how to sell. You must have financial acumen, and you must understand how products are brought to market. You must understand human resources. This is one of the fundamental skills. However, in most business schools, and I would say even in MIT, we try to do as good a job as we possibly can. It's one thing to do it in the classroom, it's one thing to do it in extracurricular, it's one thing to do it in clubs and conferences. It's another thing to get a number and have to make that number and to go out and close customers every week, every month, have a quarterly number, have a yearly number, and know and sweat whether I make that number or not. That is what business is about. And people who haven't done that and don't understand what it's like to be a salesman, I mean at a visceral level, understanding how hard it is, understanding the pressures they're under, I think we'll have a very hard time managing a sales organization and appreciating how terrifically important they are. And I think when you look at companies that generally fail, you'll see that it's a lack of sales. So I encourage all our MBAs, and one of them is running this conference, that they should go out and they should get a quota and they should carry a bag and get that training, even if that's not what they want to do long term. So a question about sales management, sales careers. You're a good salesperson. Should you become a sales manager? And I think this sometimes is what corporations do incorrectly. You can be a great salesperson and you can know how to work a client relationship, close business and do all that. And then but in the career path, companies want to move you up. Oh, the only way to get promoted, the only way to make more money is to become a sales manager. And I think this is a real mistake. If you're a really good coder, software developer, they don't say, well, I'm going to make you manage other coders. You know, that's a profession. You can be a Microsoft fellow and become a great coder, and people really, really respect that. You can become a great inventor. I think individual sales contributors, there should be a profession where they continue to get to very high levels and get paid large amounts of money and have higher levels than someone who manages people. And I don't mean to belittle managers, but I believe that to force great salespeople to become managers sometimes is not the optimal use of the resource in the organization. And I would encourage more organizations, like we did at IBM when I was there, was to have a track where people can be professional salespeople if they want, and they don't have to be sales managers. And understand that's a very respected, that's a very honored, that's a very valuable career path to this organization, much as it is for a software developer.